At 11:30 every night, the office emptied. The lights went off. The last coworker left. And after everyone was gone, one man didn't go home. He stayed. Then he pulled out a pillow, changed into comfortable clothes, and prepared to sleep at his desk. For almost 2 years, this was his secret. His goal: retire at 35. Not because he inherited money, not because he won the lottery, and not because he had some revolutionary investment strategy. He simply decided that rent was taking too much of his paycheck, so he stopped paying it. At least, that's the simple version of the story. The real version is much stranger. Imagine a man earning an ordinary salary in an expensive city. Every month, a huge chunk of his income disappeared into rent. He started doing the math. 1 year of rent, then 5 years, then 10. And eventually, he had a thought that would completely change his life. What if I could save almost all of that money instead? At first, the idea sounded temporary. Just a few weeks, then a few months. But temporary sacrifices have a strange way of becoming routines. His workplace had bathrooms. It had electricity. It had a place to sit. And depending on the circumstances, he could use a nearby gym for showers and exercise. So his apartment became an office. And his office became a home. During the day, he looked like every other employee. He worked, answered emails, talked to coworkers, grabbed lunch. Nobody needed to know what happened after everyone went home. Then the building got quiet. He would wait. Sometimes he'd sleep at his desk. Sometimes he'd find a private corner. And every morning, before coworkers arrived, he'd pack everything away. The office had to look like an office again. That's where the sacrifice becomes difficult to understand. Because saving money wasn't the only thing he was giving up. He was giving up privacy, normal mornings, a real bedroom, a normal social life, and the simple feeling of having somewhere that was completely yours. Imagine getting invited out after work. You can't casually say, "Sure, I'll come over." Because eventually you have to return to the building. Imagine dating someone. How do you explain where you live? Imagine getting sick. Or having a terrible day. Where do you go when the place you're supposed to relax is also your workplace? This is where the story stops being inspirational and starts becoming uncomfortable. Because from a spreadsheet, the decision looks brilliant. Rent saved, savings rate increases. Financial independence arrives faster. But spreadsheets don't measure loneliness. They don't measure stress. They don't measure relationships you didn't build because you were too focused on the goal. And that's the part retire early stories often leave out. Every financial decision has an opportunity cost. If you save more money today, you gain more financial freedom tomorrow. But what are you giving up to get there? For this man, the answer was enormous. 2 years of living an extremely restricted life. But then came the payoff. After roughly 2 years, he had dramatically increased his savings. The money that would have gone toward rent had instead stayed under his control. His financial independence targets suddenly looked much closer. And eventually, he reached the point where working wasn't the only option anymore. He had bought something most people spend decades trying to obtain: control over his time. But here's the question: was it worth it? If you only look at the numbers, maybe. If the sacrifice accelerated his financial independence by years, the strategy clearly had a financial effect. But there's another question. Would he do it again? Because reaching a goal faster isn't automatically the same thing as living better. You could save $30,000 by making your life miserable. You could save $50,000 by never going anywhere. You could retire earlier by sacrificing years you actually wanted to enjoy. At some point, optimization becomes a trade. And the trade isn't always obvious until afterward. That's the psychological lesson hiding underneath this extreme story. When you have a huge goal, it's easy to focus so intensely on the finish line that everything happening along the way starts looking like an acceptable sacrifice. One more year, one more sacrifice, one more uncomfortable decision, until you realize you've been postponing your life. Financial independence can be powerful. Saving aggressively can absolutely change your future. But extreme frugality isn't free. You pay for it with something. Sometimes that's comfort. Sometimes experiences. sometimes relationships, sometimes your health or peace of mind, and sometimes the sacrifice is completely worth it. That's the decision only you can make, because the real goal of financial freedom isn't simply to stop working as early as possible. It's to have enough control over your money that you can choose what your life looks like. And maybe that's the uncomfortable question this man's story leaves us with. Would you sacrifice 2 years of normal life to buy back decades of freedom? Or would you rather take the slower path and actually enjoy the years you're trying so hard to escape?